So now we'll look at why we are attracted to holding on to shame and guilt, which seems crazy. It seems that we really want to feel better. So why would we be attracted to holding on to shame and guilt? The short answer is that we are so identified with shame and guilt that we think that's who we are. We think that unworthy person is who we are. So there is a part of us that likes the devil we know. We don't want to let go of the past associated with those aspects. We don't want to fully let go of all of that because it's all that we know. And so there is a fear of who will I be without my angst, without my depression, my anxiety. As much as that seems not to be the case, consciously we're like, I wish I didn't have all this experience, this internal experience. There is a part of us that's all we know. That's all we know, and those feelings that we have, those uncomfortable feelings, also relate to a whole lot of behaviours that we've developed to deal with them and to get by in life. So it's not just a simple matter of saying, okay, yeah, I don't want those feelings anymore and I'm willing to let them go. It's about letting go of behavioural patterns that are long ingrained, associated with those feelings, about the past associated with those feelings, about our whole history really associated with those feelings. And so it's a big deal to let go of all of that because it really is opening us to a new world, to a brave new world. Now, in terms of A Course in Miracles, because it's a spiritual, psycho-spiritual system, we need to look at its metaphysics. So here we have the Godhead or oneness. Love is another way of calling this abstract oneness, which is a very similar concept to what you find in the Upanishads and the Hindu tradition of the Vedanta philosophy. So this idea of reality is this undifferentiated oneness, and that being reality is what defines a non-dualistic spirituality, a spirituality that says there is this oneness that is real. The world in which there is separation, separate interests, bodies, etc., isn't reality, although it seems to be. And so in the Vedanta tradition, they would say that the Godhead, or that part of that oneness, kind of had a dream, or the world is God's dream or play. God is just this oneness is somehow playing or imagining this world, and it's not reality. Now, in A Course in Miracles, the Godhead has nothing to do with the world. It's we who are having the dream of a world. Now, I don't want to get really in depth into the Course's metaphysics in this video because it's ideally for people who aren't familiar with the Course. So I want to stick to some basics because the metaphysics can get a little bit complicated. So, the world. Differences, competition, scarcity, lack, not enough to go around, all of that kind of thing. This is part of our worldly experience. Now, because we perceive differences, competition and scarcity in the world, that is our experience, particularly growing up as children, only so much love to go around amongst the siblings, or some people are winners, some people are losers, all that kind of thing. We identify with shame and guilt. Shame, we're not good enough. Guilt, we've done a bad thing. You know, if we're being punished, we might really harshly, we might develop a very guilty self-concept. If we feel ashamed or less than others because of something, then we'll develop a very shame-filled self-concept. And both of these are associated with unworthiness. Now, A Course in Miracles would say that we seem to have developed those feelings and an identification with those feelings because of what happened to us in the world. But really, these feelings are kind of triggered in the world, but they are reminiscent of shame and guilt that really stem from feeling separate from the Godhead. So even when we're born, before anything else happens to us or any other experience, we still are born with a concept identified with shame and guilt because we feel separate from this oneness because we're so identified with the body. Now, when we are feeling identified with unworthiness, shame and guilt, we are in what the Course in Miracles would say our wrong mind. But available to us as well within the mind, the right mind is a sense of wholeness, security and peace. So according to A Course in Miracles, our mind is split in two, into what it calls a wrong mind, which is identified with shame and guilt, and a right mind, which is identified with wholeness, security and peace. So if you've ever had an experience, I'm sure you have, or I have, and I've spoken to many people who also have, where everything seems to be going wrong in your life, you feel scared for all sorts of reasons, some sort of insecurity, whether it be financial, to do with a relationship, your health. There is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, probably even depression mixed in with all of that, and you're struggling to cope. However, every now and then you might experience a sense of calmness, of contentment, and those fears are just not there in that moment. What is going on? Well, according to A Course in Miracles, you have switched into your right mind in those moments. So the outer circumstances haven't changed, but your identification has. Somehow you've identified with your right mind. You've switched into your right mind, then feeling a sense of wholeness, security and peace, because by switching to your right mind, you have connected with the memory of your place within that oneness, which is eternal and is unbroken. You are still, as the Course says, we are at home in God, dreaming of exile. So on some level, you connect with that idea or feeling of security, love, wholeness, that is a part of your spiritual self, is where your spiritual self resides. And all of that memory is within your mind, within the right mind. Now also, when you do connect with that sense of wholeness and peace, you'll also find that you're less judgmental of other people, and you feel a sense of community, or more a sense of shared interests with other people. So you don't feel at odds when you're in a queue or you're about to get into a queue and it's like you're not sure who goes first, you or the other person. That's not going to feel so much of a competition. All right, who really was here first? It'll be easy, and you won't feel at odds with that other person. Might sound like a simple example, but these little things, everything becomes a symbol of who you think you are. So even in this little circumstance where you're assessing up with the other person who goes first, if you feel at odds with them and a little bit aggro if they step forward or whatever, then you have identified yourself as being separate from oneness and with shame and guilt. You might not consciously be aware of that, but that is what is going on an unconscious level. So back to why we feel resistant to letting go of shame and guilt. So as I said at the intro to this talk, we are so identified with shame and guilt and certain aspects of behaviour that letting them go is difficult. It's the devil we know. Particular roles that we may have developed to help protect us from shame and guilt as children, these roles can be deeply ingrained, and right up to midlife, these are the ones that we generally are operating from. We might have become a helper, a fixer, a gangster, in inverted commas, to try and buttress ourselves against a sense of shame and smallness, weakness. All of these can be considered as kind of pride systems. These are the ways we get to feel valued in society, or feel that there is some meaning to existence. At least I can help someone, or maybe I can fix something, or maybe I can exert some power and control over others and thereby get the seeming respect I think I should have got way back. So we're resistant to letting go of these defenses because as children we needed them to feel safe. But to our ego, in the Course in Miracles terms, and here I refer to ego as, in the Eastern spiritual traditions, the ego as being a false illusory self, the self that is identified with being a body in the world and has no clue of the spiritual, capital S, self that abides within the Godhead. So we are also, the ego part of us is afraid of extinction. It fears that if we let go of shame and guilt, let go of our identification with these roles down here as well, that not only will we're facing a brave new world and we don't know what it will be like, we're also afraid of absolute annihilation, that we will cease to exist, because that is what the ego is telling us. Now, A Course in Miracles seeks to work with our resistance, the ego's resistance to let all of this go, and that belief that letting it go would lead to annihilation. A Course in Miracles path is not a direct path, as some Eastern spiritual traditions are, where they would say, okay, you're not the limited earthbound being, you are an unlimited spiritual, eternal, whole, loving self up here. Therefore, the way to experience that is perhaps through meditation or other practices where you seek to quiet the mind and get some kind of direct experience of this wholeness. That is not A Course in Miracles pathway. The Course in Miracles path works more with our resistance to letting go of the negative. So the Course's path involves undoing gently, through its process of forgiveness, undoing our attachment to shame and guilt. So the Course says it is not a course in teaching the meaning of love. That kind of actually can't be taught, it can only be experienced. It is a course in undoing all the barriers to love. So it's about undoing our identification here, and that is done by working with our resistance gently and undoing the self-concept associated with shame and guilt. In the next video, I'll talk about the Course's unique process of forgiveness and how it actually does work to undo our identification with shame and guilt in a way that respects our fear of annihilation. Thanks for watching.